Well, thanks for joining us at 6 p.m. I'm Niranjan. Quick check the headlines.
हमारे सेना और सुरक्षा के जवान जो है मुंहतोड़ जवाब दे रहे हैं.
Forces crush Pakistan's attempts at Baramulla. Army gives a befitting reply. Home Minister warns Islamabad. A second strike stopped in Gurdaspur. BSF troops foil infiltration bid in Chakri along the international border. Beaten thrice, including in Poonch, but Pakistan won't learn its lessons. At least 5 ceasefire violations in the last 24 hours. He led from the front. 24-year-old Constable Nitin Kumar makes the ultimate sacrifice in Baramulla. Adnan Sami takes on the pro-Pakistani Stars Brigade, says Pakistani stars can't just disappear after fanfare in India. Tells them to take a clear position on terror. 3 attacks in 24 hours by Pakistan, 1 Jawan martyred. Should the pro-Pak Brigade now take a break? And in some breaking news coming in, Times Now is getting you more details of how the Enforcement Directorate is trying to clamp down on Pakistan's attempts to push money to fund terror. In another move to isolate Pakistan, the Enforcement Directorate putting all investments from Pakistan in India under the scanner. Enforcement Directorate officials say that according to FDI policy, Pakistan cannot make investments in India using the open route or the automatic route. Now, this is part of the diplomatic isolation. Remember, as far as India is concerned, earlier as well, there was a clampdown on money that was pushed into Kashmir, and now it's much bigger. It's part of the diplomatic efforts by Prema, by the government, isn't it, Prema?
Well, Niranjan, if you see earlier, we had brought out exclusive details regarding how the Enforcement Directorate was looking at terror funding from Pakistan. They were looking at various players in Pakistan who were sending terror funds to Kashmir and to the Valley, and how they were fueling protests in Valley and unrest in Valley. Now, this information is extremely serious. We have got confirmation from our sources within the Enforcement Directorate that the Enforcement Directorate is now has now put all Pakistan investment firms and all Pakistan investments in India under scanner. Now, what does this mean? What this really means is an Enforcement Directorate will look at all the investments that Pakistan firms have made in India, and all these investments have been put under scanner. In fact, what the Enforcement Directorate officials have told us is that every time a Pakistan firm makes an investment in India, according to our FDI policy, they cannot make an automatic route investment. They cannot make an investment through the open route. Every time a Pakistan firm makes an investment in India, they need the concurrence of the government. So what ED will now do is they will look at all these investments of Pakistan firms in India, and they will see whether concurrence of the government was taken, and even these firms who had taken permission from the government of India, whether these firms had filed their returns with the RBI, whether these firms had opened legitimate bank accounts with Indian accounts, whether KYC norms were followed. All this will be really looked at. And in fact, ED will also look at the other firms, the firms that had not invested in India without taking the permission of India. Even those firms will now be looked at. In fact, what the ED is looking at doing, Niranjan, is ED will now look at the possibility of charging these firms under various violations. In fact, the violation here is going to be FEMA violation. ED is looking at the possibility of charging these Pakistan firms under FEMA violation, and also blacklisting them and prohibiting these firms from operating in India.
Yeah, we're also being joined this evening by a voice in strategic affairs. Saurabh Shukla is joining us live. But before I come across to you, Saurabh, just one more question, Prema. Now, this is part of India's efforts, all the efforts that we are taking to, of course, turn on the heat on Pakistan. So you're telling us, as far as this latest move is concerned, it means that all investments that have been made through the government's concurrence, whether norms have been followed or not, so essentially all investments from Pakistan, you're saying, will come under the scanner. Is that correct?
Well, exactly. Here we're also talking about all the legal investments of Pakistan-based firms in India, and also the illegal investments. Now, ED was anyways looking into all the illegal investments, and there was a separate case attached to it. But now what we are hearing is that even the legal investments that Pakistan has been making in India, that will be scrutinized to see whether the concurrence of the government was sought, whether the returns were filed with the RBI, whether banking norms were followed, whether KYC norms were followed, whether any violation took place. All this is going to be looked at. In fact, ED is going to prepare an entire report zeroing in on all these firms that have been making investments in India to find out where is this money coming from, where is this money going back to, who are these players, what are these businesses all about. All this is going to be looked at, and in fact ED is going to send a detailed report out to the Finance Ministry.
Yeah, stay with me. Let me get in Saurabh Shukla. Saurabh, how do you analyze the government's move now, the fact that the government has decided to bring in the Enforcement Directorate, put all Pakistani investments in India under the scanner, essentially looking at all of these firms, all the money that's coming in. If any violations are found, of course, they will be blacklisted, and all businesses will be stopped from these companies that have violated norms. How do you analyze this move?
I can tell you there is a background to it. There's a reason why, and I'm glad that the government is doing it, because the intelligence agencies have a lot of proof now that a lot of Pakistani funds are flowing into India, and a lot of them are actually being used for terrorist activities, propaganda activities to certain NGOs, some parties. So certainly the government should be investigating all that. In fact, I would say that they should ask the intelligence agencies, the RNW and IB here in India, to look into some of these where these funds are flowing, because a lot of times the propaganda machinery, the pro-Pakistan propaganda machinery that has been running, that has been funded through these funds. And besides the legitimate businesses, the government should also be widening the probe and also be looking at people with linkages, why a certain section of people have been running the pro-Pakistani propaganda, because I think that should be in the ambit of probe as well. And there is a definite and very valid reason why the government is doing it, because they need to know that how a lot of these how the funding is coming into some of these sleeper cells, how it's being routed through third countries. I think there is as we talk, there is a deep probe that has been ordered, and the government is mindful of the fact that there's a need to clamp down on the activities of such people who are indulging in these terrorist and disruptive activities at the behest of Pakistan.
Absolutely. And Prema, coming back to you, now you were talking about the Enforcement Directorate looking into these firms and whether they'd filed returns with RBI, whether these Pakistani firms had opened accounts with authorized banks in India. Now you'll very well remember the route taken by elements in Pakistan while trying to push in money into Kashmir. You'll remember that there was an Italian route that was used. I think we all very well remember that story. Prema, is there a link between the developments in that case to this?
Well, Niranjan, as you rightly said, this case that you were talking about, it is relating to the terror funding case. In fact, what Pakistan basically did is they tried to root out money through various other countries, and finally the money reached the separatists in Kashmir. In fact, if you see, Western Union money transfer and certain other modes of transfers were used by Pak-based terrorist groups. In fact, ED has an entire report on this, on terror funding, on how Hizbul Mujahideen, LET, JEM, all these terrorists operating out of Pakistan have been sending money to various other countries, and then this money has been coming to India through a very circuitous way. Now, this is a case relating to the terror funding. There is also a case relating to Syed Salahuddin, and in fact this is a huge case which talks about how separatists have also been involved in whatever unrest that we have been seeing in the valley. But now what is more important is, it's not only terror funding which the ED is looking at. The ED is also looking at Pak investments in India. All the investments of all Pakistan-based firms which have been taking place in India, that is going to be under scanner. All the legal investments are going to be re-looked into to see if there have been any violations, to see if all the guidelines and norms have been followed. In fact, our FDI policy actually says that Pakistan-based firms cannot get into any business in India through the open route or through the automatic route. For a Pakistan-based firm to invest in India, they need the concurrence of the government of India. Now, even if a firm has the concurrence from the government of India, these firms are supposed to follow various norms. They're supposed to file their returns with the RBI. They are supposed to open legitimate accounts with Indian banks. Even when they open these accounts, they are supposed to follow various KYC norms. So there are a whole list of procedures that needs to be followed. Now, what ED is going to do is, ED is going to make a list of these firms. ED is also going to scrutinize the violations and see if these firms can be put under...
Prema, stay with me. Prema, stay with me. In fact, also joining us live this evening are G. Parthasarathy, former envoy to Pakistan, and R.S. Singh, former RAW officer, joining us live on this breaking broadcast. This is just part one of the breaking news broadcast. Prema also has a few documents with her, which we will break over the course of the next 15 minutes. But before that, G. Parthasarathy, my question to you, coming after the MFN blow, of course, there was a lot spoken about whether the MFN move that India has is now mulling over as far as Pakistan is concerned was ineffective. Some spoke about whether it would be effective or ineffective at all. But as far as the latest move of the ED is concerned, to put by default all investments of Pakistan from Pakistan under the scanner, is this an effective step in your view, sir?
It touches at the margins because first of all, the Pakistanis started off funding mission through their High Commission. In fact, their acting High Commissioner Jilani, who is now ambassador in Washington, was forced to leave the country when he was caught doing it with separatists from Kashmir. This moved on. We know of cases over the years where the Pakistanis have even provided obliging people in Kashmir with apartments in Dubai. So in keeping track of funds, what is most important is to check the antecedents of the recipient, because it can come through Italy, it will come through Dubai, and any other center where you have non-resident Pakistanis. So certainly directly from Pakistan will be perhaps round-tripping business investments, but equally, and I think we've done it in the past, we need to keep a very close track of investments coming in from places with large non-resident Pakistani populations.
So you feel it touches at the margins, but R.S. Singh, before I bring you in, we have another bit of breaking information, an exclusive news break. Prema has the documents. It's a two-part news break. One of a letter written by the Home Secretary just after the Uri attack, and secondly, a report prepared in August, which is the basis of the surgical strikes that were held by the Indian Army. Details coming up on the other side. Stay with us.
Tonight.
All right, in some more breaking news, in fact, two sets of documents. One document that was prepared after India conducted the surgical strike across the line of control, and the second document that was prepared in August, a little after the Kashmir unrest. Let me go across to Prema Sridevi, who first talks about the Home Secretary report, a report that warned post the surgical strikes what would happen, and very, very uncanny. Some of the observations made there, some of the details that were in that letter that was sent, a secret document sent to all DGPs and IGPs. Prema, take us first to the Home Secretary report and how it adds up to what happened at Baramulla.
Well, Niranjan, in fact, this is a letter which was sent out by the Union Home Secretary to all the DGs and IGs of all states and union territories. And in fact, we're not going to put out the operational details and the security measures that have been taken by the Home Ministry because of security reasons. But yes, we are going to show you that particular portion which talks about Pakistan and how Pakistan has been trying to foment trouble. In fact, if you see, here is this portion, Niranjan, which says the recent surgical strikes by the Indian Army on terror launching pads across the border may encourage Pak-based terror groups to orchestrate indiscriminate acts of violence against iconic targets as also against innocent civilians. In fact, this document very clearly shows, talks about how Pakistan has been trying to foment trouble in India, and in fact this is a report, this is a letter that has been sent out by the Union Home Secretary to all the DGPs and to all the IGs across all the states and union territories. It was also sent out to Commissioner of Police in Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore and Ahmedabad, and in fact to all the chief secretaries of all states, and it clearly talks about how Pakistan-based terror outfits are trying to foment trouble. They are trying to orchestrate indiscriminate acts of violence against iconic targets and also against innocent civilians. Now, this clearly speaks about the concern. It also speaks about India's operational readiness, how much we know about what Pakistan is actually trying to do post the surgical strikes. Yeah,
Prema, stay with me. Let me bring in Arasin Singh at this point. Arasin Singh, just reading out, to take ahead what Prema has been saying. One of the key points made in this report prepared on the 30th of September, a letter that was sent out. It says, one, that during the year, the attacks during the year demonstrate the abiding interest of Pakistani-based terror groups to carry out sensational attacks. Festive season offers conducive environment for terrorists to inflict greater damage to innocent civilians, seek maximum publicity. Most important point, and that's point 3, Arasin Singh, it says, and I read, and I quote from here, access control to vital installations and security force camps need to be given special attention. This is 2 days before Baramulla. Arasin Singh.
Yes, these reports were there in the press as well. And let me tell you, my assessment is that Pakistan made a huge diplomatic miscalculation by this Uri attack. And therefore, when it was followed by our surgical strike from our side. But I would like to comment on this, this financial aspect that you have said. Earlier I didn't get a chance to comment. Now look, this 2.5 decades of this jihadi, proxy war, which was cyclic in nature. A terrorist attack, and then interspersed with a heavy dose of talks and visits and reconciliatory statements, and then followed by another terrorist attack. Now this whole cyclical aspect of this proxy war had thrown up a huge industry in India and in Pakistan. Sorry, you can put it the other way around, Pakistan as well as India. So now what has happened is that what the surgical strike has essentially done is that it has shifted the focus from jihadi proxy war to an extent to conventional to the conventional domain, which Pakistan thought will never happen. And all these beefing up of troops on LOC and movement of troops that you see is a part of that manifestations. So therefore this is a big achievement, let me tell you, this surgical strike as far as the surgical strike is concerned, because Pakistan was always in that comfort that at the one end of the spectrum you have nuclear weapons, on the other spectrum you have jihadi or proxy war. So there is no place for a conventional conflict. Now it is directly linked to finances. You see, jihadi proxy war was a low cost option. You could do it with the drug money. But once it comes to this conventional, when you have to gear up for a conventional conflict, then it costs money, and it costs white money. Let me tell you. So squeezing Pakistan's financial resources in India will have some impact, and as Partha sir brought out, well, it may be on the margins, but definitely it is this was an imperative move.
Absolutely. I know, Saurabh Shukla, I know you want to come in, but before we go across to the next breaking bit of information that we're getting, the second, we told you we'll get you the details of the report that was prepared in August, the basis on which Indian Army carried out strikes. The details of why and where we attacked was in that report. The details coming up after this short break. Parthasarathy, stay with us. Details coming up on the other side.
tonight.
And more breaking news coming in, the report that tells you how and why we did what we did as far as the surgical strike is concerned. Prema has with her a secret report that was prepared by multiple agencies in August this year. Prema, take us through the details of that report. Tell us about Commander Haider. Tell us about the areas that were mentioned across the LOC which match what the Indian Army did.
Well, Niranjan, if you see, when the surgical strikes were carried out by India, we all thought what was the real reason.
No.
And in fact, there were a lot of reasons came about that these are places where there were sleeper cells. And in fact, this report, this multi-agency center report, very clearly enumerates the reasons as to why there was a need for India to carry out surgical strikes in those places where the terrorists were operating. In fact, we also know who was the mastermind, who was the person who was sitting in Pak-occupied Kashmir and who was masterminding this entire operation, who is from both the JEM and the LET, and he was also trying to get in a lot of funds and infuse these funds into the bordering villages. And we are here talking about a person called Haider Khan. He is being called as Commander Haider Khan, who belongs to a terrorist outfit. In fact, this report very clearly talks about the sleeper cells in certain places in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And if you see, these are the same sleeper cells that were targeted by the Indian Army when they carried out the surgical strikes. In fact, I'm only going to show you that particular portion which talks about Commander Haider Khan, because this is a secret document. It has a lot of operational details which we do not want to give out because of security reasons. But yes, if you look at this portion, it says, in a meeting in Kotli. Kotli now is a place in Pakistan-occupied Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It says, in a meeting in Kotli of terrorist outfits, Commander Haider Khan decided to develop a good network system and spend more money to lure people of bordering villages. It was also decided to seek Pak army covering fire during the infiltration. Now this very clearly shows, it talks about the mastermind who was actually trying to get in a lot of funds. And what is even more shocking is this report really talks about how this Commander Haider Khan, he had masterminded this entire operation sitting in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He was trying to also coordinate with the Pakistan army. It says it was also decided to seek Pak army covering fire during the infiltration. This was what happened when Uri took place. There was Pakistan army which tried to provide cover fire for the infiltrators. In fact, if you see, the inputs revealed movement of terrorists in Atmukham, Dudnial, Khel, Lipa Valley. Now Khel and Lipa, these are the two places where India had carried out surgical strikes. Now we exactly know why did the Indian army actually carry out surgical strikes in Khel and Lipa Valley, because this document very clearly talks about Commander Haider Khan, who was at these places, who was trying to get in more funds, who was trying to infuse these funds into the bordering villages in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and get these villages into the terrorist movement and also carry out infiltration. And he was also trying to coordinate with the Pakistan army and try
this multi-agency report essentially
provide cover fire.
This multi-agency report essentially tells you that India knows exactly where these terror launch pads are, and I want to bring in G. Parthasarathy at this point. G. Parthasarathy, when you talk about this report, that mentioned areas like Atmukham, Dudnial, Khel, Folovai, Shardi, and inside the Lipa Valley. Now, two of these places were targeted by the Indian Army in the surgical strike. Now, this only tells you, sir, from our observation, that we know exactly where these terror launch pads are, and we are ready if we have to do it again. We are ready to do it again.
Well, let me say this, that from what I see of the quality of intelligence now being produced, it is certainly far, far superior to what we were getting earlier. And therefore, at that point in time, you could go in for an cross-border attack, but never be sure of your targets. So firstly, hats off to the well-coordinated intelligence, both tech and human, which we now seem to have acquired. I think Pakistan will take it much more seriously. A point I want to make is the impact of all this. The most loudmouth Pakistani general, Rahil Sharif, has now gone into Parda. He's not been seen of or heard after that attack. He sends his spokesman. Now, the fact is, we should be careful. He is due to retire soon. Though he disavows any intentions, he obviously has ambitions. So he will try have his revenge at some point in time, and I'm sure we are prepared because Pakistan may say nothing great happened, but their Prime Minister convened an all-party meeting. I mean, how is it that the army gets so excited and talks about heavy Indian casualties when nobody died, and then the Prime Minister calls in the entire opposition to swear solidarity and unity? So I think this has really hurt, and this combined with their looking stupid in the eyes of the entire South Asian region, where every SAARC country has boycotted the SAARC summit in Islamabad. All I can be sorry for them, but sorry for the plight they are in, though it's undeserved. But the fact of the matter is, I think we should be prepared. One redeeming feature being by December the snows will start and the command will change.
Absolutely. I think, Saurabh, you wanted to make a point. I think a very valid point made by G. Parthasarathy there when he talks about the quality of intelligence that was prepared. Spot on. These were the exact launch pads that were targeted.
Absolutely. I agree completely with High Commissioner Parthasarathy. Earlier, the problem was that various agencies would hold back intelligence. In fact, by the time intelligence were passed on from one agency to the other, precious time was lost. But this time, sources are telling us that it was a precision strike. In fact, be it NTRO, be it RNW, be it military intelligence, they all joined hands together to create these high-value targets, and obviously they were bang on. And the other part is that this whole chain, the chain of command has been working seamlessly. In fact, there has been great coordination between both National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Foreign Secretary Jaishankar. That's the reason why you see in tandem the tactical strike happening and the diplomacy working over time. So that's a great thing that the Prime Minister has done by making sure that all arms of the government, it's no longer the case where North Bloc and South Bloc are looking the other way around. They're all working in tandem, and that is the reason why you've had this surgical strike. And I think it's a great thing for India's intelligence community and the security establishment that they've been able to finally come of age and make sure they've set a precedent for the other countries to follow by having a strike where there has been a minimal collateral damage and the target has been hit bang on.
I want to bring in RSN Singh, but before that, the last bit of information that we have, and Prema has that information with her as well, the same report that talks about separatists and how they helped fuel the unrest. Taking a very short break. RSN Singh, coming to you after this very short break. Stay with us.
Tonight.
And in some pictures coming in from Baramulla, very close to the army and the BSF camps that were targeted. Pictures of the bomb disposal squad removing an explosive shell from a residential compound. This was close to the 46th Rashtriya Rifles Army camp. Now, what we are given to understand from Mir Farid, who's in Baramulla, is that the shell may have landed in the compound following the exchange of gunfire last evening. Let's go across, rather early this morning. Let's go across to Farid. Farid, what's the latest on the operations? I think we saw a few members of the bomb disposal squad on the location.
Well, yes, it is a mysterious shell, in fact, that has been found in the compound of a residential house very close to the site of the encounter, that's 46th RR camp. Now, the people of the house in panic basically called the bomb disposal squad. Army and police reached the spot and they have removed the shell from the compound. Now, we do not know what kind of a shell it is, whether it's a explosive mortar shell or a grenade propeller shell or even a star shell, an illuminator, but that of course is being ascertained. But yes, this did create panic in the locality and especially in the residence or the compound where this shell had landed. Now this, of course, could have landed yesterday when there was this intense exchange of fire between militants and the army, and during that time this shell may have missed its target and landed in this residential compound. We know that the army camp is surrounded by a residential area, and this house is also very close to the army camp, so there is every chance that during that exchange of fire this could have landed there, but now it has been safely removed by the BDS, and they are ascertaining and trying to find out what exactly is the nature of this shell and how explosive or how dangerous it could have been.
Yeah, Farid, we'll come back to you for an update on that as and when we get more information of that mysterious shell that was recovered close to a residential compound. Some more breaking news coming in on the story that we've been tracking of the documents that we've accessed this evening. All right, documents with Times Now, and Prema Sridevi getting us details of the documents of the multi-agency center that spoke about the role of separatists and the role of separatists in fueling the unrest in Kashmir in August this year. Very interesting observations, Prema. Take us through what it speaks about separatists and how they helped spread the unrest in the valley, almost supporting terrorists in this case.
Well, Niranjan, on one hand, you have terrorist outfits like the Hizbul Mujahideen, the JEM, the LET. On the other hand, we have separatists in the valley. Now, what this MAC report really talks about is how these separatists and the terrorist outfits are walking hand in hand and how they are hand in gloves with each other. In fact, this report really talks about certain inputs. It says inputs reveal that Imam and Maulvis in Baramulla, Kupwara, Shopian and Kolgam have been making undesirable speeches during the Friday congregation. And they also, it goes on to say, inputs on instigation by local separatists have also come to notice, who have been issuing schedule for various protest rallies in the area. The pattern of incidents has indicated that the protests were pre-planned and the element of violence was added on behest of active terrorists, which shows that how terrorists and these separatists are together. It also goes on to talk about how WhatsApp has been used by these terrorists and separatists. It says it was reported that LET operatives in Pakistan were demonstrating fabrication of crude bombs through WhatsApp. It also says further there was an input which suggests the presence of armed terrorists during the protest rallies in the valley. And in fact, it goes on to talk about how these inputs highlight the terrorist designs to perpetrate violence during the protest. This document and this intel input very clearly talks about how Pakistan-based terror outfits like the LET, the Hizbul Mujahideen, the JEM have been hand in glove with these separatists in the valley, and both of them together, they have been planning out this entire unrest to see how various ways and means through which they can fuel this unrest in the valley. Yeah,
I want to bring in Arasin Singh at this point. Arasin Singh, if you look at this document that was prepared by the multi-agency center, and this was August, I think in the thick of the protests and the unrest in Kashmir. One talks about the fact that the protests were pre-planned. We already knew about that aspect. Secondly, talks about the element of violence, very disturbing, element of violence added at the behest of terrorists. Element of violence added at the behest of terrorists by separatists. It tells you how serious the situation is.
Yes, if at all, say, I mean, hypothetically, if at all this entire, violence in Kashmir Valley was indigenous, there would have been some leader thrown up by now. Now who is the leader? And how can a movement sustain itself without a leader? So it's very clear the whole thing was orchestrated and coordinated by the ISI, coordinated by this Hurriyat and others. And this has been happening for many years. I mean, programs are made. I have copies of. I can show you copies of this program as to on what day what is to be done, where stones have to be pelted, who will be in charge of mobilizing these stone pelters. What the larger point I must say, that for last 3 decades that India has been at the receiving end of proxy war, could not have been possible without proxies facilitating within our country. And these separatists are nothing but proxy soldiers of Pakistan. But even more dangerous are the proxies, who put on that garb of intellectualism. They are everywhere in all walks of life, and you perfectly understand what I'm trying to say. So therefore, I mean, it is not at all a surprise to me. Some of them are getting exposed, and your channel has done a wonderful job as far as exposing these, proxy soldiers of Pakistan is concerned. At the moment, some of them, have gone into hiding, but they're just waiting for a chance. They're waiting for a chance to surface. Initially they made some noises, doubting the very, making the people of India, skeptical about this whole operations. But now today, with your revelation, and you have shown, I mean, many things, connected to the operation. If I'm not mistaken, these visuals also are a part of that operation. And I'm sure, I mean, give me that intelligence by tomorrow. I think you may, tomorrow or day after, you may just come out with the whole, video recording or whatever recording is there of the entire operation. So, but I was talking about to Ambassador Parthasarathy about, this desirability that should we put this out in public domain. Well, I'm not sure about it. It is a tough calling, because you would be setting a wrong precedence that, if after every operation you would be expected to, come out with some kind of a visual proof.
Yes.
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in. So I leave it to, judgment of others. But at the moment, I would. I have not taken a, definite call on this. So as to say.
Yeah. Yeah. One quick point, one last point from Saurabh Shukla as well. Saurabh, the report also talks about how Separatists...
I just want to add to what Mr. Singh was saying. I think the government should put this out, because given the current scenario of where optics plays a key role, leave aside the operational details, but the government must do it not to satisfy these naysayers, but to make sure to tell the international community and the larger public opinion, because social media is so proactive these days. It's important for the cyber objectives for the government. I think the government must put it out in the form that they deem fit, but this video must come out. That's my
Saurabh Shukla, RSN Singh, thank you for joining us with those inputs. Prema, thank you for the reports that you've been able to sort of give us details of, based on which the surgical strikes were conducted. Taking a very short break. Newswatch coming up next with Navika Kumar. Stay with us.